We are going to discuss Hunter Biden has been found guilty on gun charges. So we are going to cover that story tonight as well. Okay. Start us off right. Smash that like. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share. Thank you very much. Let's go ahead to some of the comments here. Thank you for the super chat, Kyle. Looking forward to our conversation tomorrow, Sabs. Yes, I'm going to be on Kyle's show tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern time. I'll send that out to you guys. You guys know how I do this, but I'm looking forward to that. Thank you for the super sticker, New Beginning. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sparky. Love you, Sabby. Thank you. Love you, Sparky. Thank you, Sam. Guiding principles greater than policy list. Warren had plans. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Elizabeth Warren did have some plans. And thank you for the super chat, New York Varsity. People can criticize him if they want, but the fact of the matter is that is the one running. That is the one running. With his chin sticking out, I trust him more now. Thank you so much for that, New York Varsity. All right, and I'll take that Rumble rant, Eric. Thank you. All right, thank you for the Rumble rant, Doc Durkin. Jose, fire alarm, Vega in the house. I like that. That's a cool t-shirt. Fire alarm, Vega in the house. All right, we're jumping into this breaking news story. Ladies and gentlemen, it appears that Hunter Biden has been found guilty on all 3 gun charges, but is it enough? And will he be punished the same way the average citizen would, or would he get some type of a pardon or a pass because he is the president's son? Let's go ahead and dive in with this clip here from ABC News.
Good morning. We're coming on the air because there is breaking news at this hour. A guilty verdict in Hunter Biden's federal gun trial in Wilmington, Delaware. The president's son facing 3 felony counts, accused of lying on a federal form about drug use when he bought a gun in 2018, saying he was not a drug user, and prosecutors arguing he illegally had that gun for 11 days. After deliberating for about an hour on the first day, about 2 hours today, they have found him guilty on all 3 charges. Count 1, making a false statement in the purchase of a firearm. Guilty of count 2, making a false statement related to information required to be kept by a federal licensed firearms dealer. And guilty on count 3, possessing a firearm by a person who is an unlawful user or addicted to a controlled substance. So again,
let's go ahead and pause it here because I want to give everyone time to actually look at this. So the first count is false statement in purchase of a firearm. Count 2, false statement related to information required to be kept by federal firearms licensed dealer. And of course, count 3, possession of a firearm by a person who is an unlawful user or addicted to a controlled substance. So those are the 3 counts there. He was found guilty on all 3 charges.
The breaking news at this hour, Hunter Biden found guilty on all 3 felony charges. Let's get right to Terry Moran outside the courthouse. Terry?
That's right, David. You've got it. All 3 counts, guilty as charged. About 3 hours of deliberation. 1 hour yesterday, 2 hours today. The jurors got to work and they came through with this verdict. Each of these counts required the jurors to take into account what Hunter's defense was here, which was basically that while he had abused drugs, as he confessed in his memoir, Beautiful Things, as the jurors heard plenty of evidence about. At that time, Hunter Biden said since he didn't testify, but his lawyer presented evidence that he did not feel that he was actually abusing drugs at that time and therefore was not guilty of these crimes. The jurors rejected that, guilty on all 3 counts. Hunter Biden arrived in court just before the jury was brought in and read the verdict.
Terry, let me ask.
Pause for just a second here. Imagine if any of the people that were convicted and were penalized with Joe Biden's crime bills. Imagine if they said that they didn't feel like they actually abused drugs at that time, right? wouldn't have seen that sympathy for them.
About the show of support in the front rows of that courtroom. As we know, the First Lady, Jill Biden, they're supporting her son every day but one in this trial. Multiple members of the family and friends close to Hunter Biden, all there. We know in the closing arguments, the prosecution, well aware of that image right there in front of the jurors, saying of family members, the First Lady, the friends who had gathered, essentially, that does not matter here.
That's exactly what they said, David. None of that matters. Pointing at the Biden family, at the First Lady, who was here almost every day, took a whirlwind trip to France to join the president for the D-Day commemorations, and came right back to be with her son. And yet it was part of the closing argument of prosecutors there. Prosecutors saying no one is above the law, no matter what their name is, no matter who is in court.
And Terry, the defense, Hunter Biden's defense team had tried to argue in closing arguments that the prosecution, while they had ample evidence that Hunter Biden was a drug user, that the window of time directly surrounding the purchase of the gun, the defense had argued the prosecution had not made the case that he was using drugs in that, that window of time, that very small window of time. But apparently the jury didn't buy that.
They didn't buy it, and in part, David, because of the law that the judge read to them. The judge, as is customary, as is part of the process, reads the jurors the law that they will apply to the facts that they heard in this case. And part of that law was that drug use for the purpose of this law did not have to occur on the day that Hunter Biden bought the weapon and checked that federal form, that it could be evidence of a pattern of drug abuse or drug addiction around that. And that certainly was clear in this case. So the defense was fighting an uphill battle, not only really against the facts, but against the law as the judge gave it to the jurors here. Now, I should say that in court, the defense, as is customary, right after the conviction was announced, renewed an appeal for an acquittal from the judge, in order to preserve an appeal, and gave notice essentially that they will appeal this case.
So they are trying to have an appeal here. And I just want you to think about something when we talk about class and privilege in this country, because the reality is the everyday Joe Schmo does not get this type of the type of rhetoric if they're convicted of what Hunter Biden is convicted of. Like that's the thing. Because of who his father is, because he does come from a certain type of privilege that the rest of us, most of us do not come from, Hunter Biden is able to get the best lawyers. He's able to get some type of sympathy that, again, if this was Jerome from Baltimore, who had the same charges that Hunter Biden did, local news would not be talking about Jerome this way. Notice the way that they are speaking about him. They're speaking about him as though, well, he didn't know and he was struggling with abuse and he was trying to get through it. It's always all this sympathy for the guy who's the president's son. And Hunter Biden's white. So he has two things going for him when it comes to the criminal justice system. So look at the way that they're speaking about him. Let's continue.
What happens now, Terry, legally to Hunter Biden?
Sentencing next. And these are very serious federal crimes. These are crimes that carry very heavy prison sentences, 10 years each for the false statement and 5 years for the illegal possession of the weapon. Now, that is highly unlikely to be applied to Hunter Biden, anything like that in this case. Experts tell us that for a first offender like him, someone who did not use the gun at all, he just kind of bought it and stuck it in his car, there's no evidence that he was going to use it in any kind of a crime. It would be highly unlikely for Hunter Biden to see prison time. But these are, as I say, very serious charges. And it may well be that prosecutors will ask for some prison time, given the nature of the charges and given what others might face.
Good morning, Rick.
So again, I just want you to think about the amount of privilege, because notice what he told you. It is unlikely that Hunter Biden will see any prison time. Again, That does not happen for the average person in this country. That damn sure as well wouldn't happen for a black male in this country, whether he was a first-time offender or not. So you see how there are certain ways that the justice system or the injustice system moves for certain people when you compare it to the everyday Joe Schmo. Because the reality is, when you put the racial element into this, and if it is a black guy who was charged with that, obviously not someone who's a public figure, but a black guy who was charged with that, they don't care if he's a first-time offender. If you talk to lawyers, you talk to those that have fought for their clients like that were first-time offenders, you will see these courts throw the book and the keys and the jail cell at them, and they will give them harsher penalties for doing the same thing that Hunter Biden did. But here they are telling you it is very unlikely that he'll see any jail time. Now, this is very interesting considering the fact that his father is the one who co-wrote the crime bills. He was the one that wanted to be so tough on crime. Get these kids off the street. Get the guns off the street. Get the drugs off the street. But when it is his son, does that still apply? We'll get to that in just a second. I want to show you the way the panel discussed this on CNN, because we're seeing just a lot. Obviously, a lot of people are saying, I can't believe they're saying that he may not get any prison time. It's always interesting to me when I'm hearing people say that, because it's like they just realized today that the justice system isn't fair. They just woke up today and heard this segment about Hunter Biden and said, oh, everybody is held accountable. And then you hear the commentator say, oh, it's very unlikely he'll get prison time. And they say, oh, I can't believe that. As if they just realized the justice system is not fair. Listen to the way that Wolf Blitzer and the panel here on CNN discussed this.
Jamie Gangel, what do you think?
Look, this is obviously a painful and difficult moment for the whole Biden family. No parent wants to see something like this happen. I think, considering how quickly the verdict came down, we saw the prosecution's case. It's not that surprising. I do think it's notable that Hunter Biden's trial and this conviction is an example of no one being above the rule of law, including the president's son, and stands in stark contrast to how former President Trump behaved up in New York, coming out every day, calling the judge corrupt, saying it was rigged, witch hunt. And I think it's also notable that President Biden has said that he will not pardon his son.
Yeah, and he would.
Let me just pause here and let's just break down what she just said, okay? So notice how it's, well, because the president's son was found guilty, that goes to show you that no one is above the law. Not necessarily. Found guilty doesn't mean you're going to prison. Found guilty doesn't mean you're going to serve your time. So the issue here is that Hunter Biden was not supposed to have a firearm. We have seen other people run into the same issue, but they went to jail. You see the problem? And by the way, this is the weakest, one of the weakest charge that they can actually get Hunter Biden on. This isn't Hunter Biden being found guilty about the business dealings that he had in Ukraine. This isn't Hunter Biden being found guilty about some of the other things that were on those videos that we've seen. This isn't anybody. You want to really go after Hunter Biden? You go after him about the business dealing that he had with Burisma in Ukraine. They're not trying to go there because that could also possibly implicate Joe Biden. So what they do is they said, well, let's just get him with the gun charge because, you know, he can't really deny that. And that way we'll say he's not above the law and we got him with something. So let's just try to get him with something. So if he was really not above the law, they would have gone after the business dealings that he had in Ukraine, which is bigger and more important than him having possession of a gun.
honor the verdict, whatever that
Correct.
would be. Evan Osnos is still with us, the Biden biographer. Evan, give us your reaction to this guilty verdict for Hunter Biden.
You know, I'm thinking back, Wolf, to the fact that Joe Biden for many, many years has talked about addiction in his family. I mean, many years ago, when he was asked why it is that he doesn't drink alcohol, he said there are too many alcoholics in my family, which is in many ways kind of running beneath the surface of this story. I mean, the fact is, this is now a day in which Joe Biden's surviving son, to use the term that he uses, is going to be going to prison, or I should say, let me fix that, has now been convicted and is now facing serious consequences.
Did you catch what he just did? So he said Joe Biden's surviving son is now going to be going to prison. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me fix that. Yeah, because Hunter is not going to go to jail. Hunter's not going to go to jail. That's why he had to fix that.
For the combination of his addiction and this period in his life, which was described in such brutal detail over the course of the last. I think it's also important to mention, as Jamie mentioned, that the president has been clear that he wasn't going to intervene in this case. He has been declining to talk about it. He has said he wouldn't pardon his son. I think that strikes a lot of people as notable. It's something that he has held fast to in this process. And you can be sure this is reverberating right now through the Biden family in a way that, after all, a family that has seen its fair share of suffering over the years and is now preparing for another very difficult phase.
Pause for a second. I got so many things to break down here before we get to the videos, the past videos of Joe Biden. First of all, why are they commending Joe Biden for doing what he is supposed to do? That is so notable of him because the president said that he's not going to pardon his son. He's not supposed to. Hunter Biden is guilty. He has been found guilty. Why are you trying to applaud him for doing something that he's just supposed to do? I don't get this. I don't get this. That's like someone going to the bathroom and saying, I went to the bathroom and I wiped. You're supposed to. Get out of here with this, man. This family has been through so much. They've had so much tragedy. They don't care about that. When these types of things happen to Black men, nobody cares what their family has been through. Nobody wants to hear. Nobody wants to hear that they grew up with a single parent. They don't care. The court system doesn't care. Nobody wants to hear, well, their mom had to work 2 jobs, so the kid was left at home by themselves. And so the gangs, they felt like that was where they belonged. So the gangs raised their kid. Nobody wants to hear that. They don't care about your tragedy. They don't care about your suffering. But when it comes to Hunter Biden, oh, the tragedy the family went through. Once again, not just the media, but the justice system, they show you how they are able to have sympathy, to be sympathetic when your skin is lighter. And especially if your daddy is the president.
Evan, stand by. Paula Reed's getting more information from inside the courtroom right now. Paula, update our viewers on the latest.
Well, as I said earlier, Hunter has enjoyed significant support from his family, friends, members of the clergy, and the First Lady of the United States has been here. His stepmom has been here most days of this trial, but the verdict came very quickly between the time we were alerted that it was ready and the time it was read. And the First Lady she didn't get here in time to hear the verdict read. So that is significant that she was not here during the verdict, but she was here for many other pivotal moments of this trial. Now, I will note the president has said that he would not pardon his son, that he will respect the verdict. I will note, look, legal nerd here, right, recovering lawyer, there's also the option to potentially commute any sentence. While he may not pardon his son, he would have the option to commute whatever sentence his son receives here for this trial. So if at the end of his term his son is still serving that sentence, he could potentially commute his sentence. So something important to remember, even though his father has said at this point he would not offer him a pardon. but he has received unwavering support from his stepmother throughout this trial. Even while she has been traveling abroad to Europe, she has still come back and been here front and center, sitting in the front row, offering support not only to her stepson, but to other members of the family. For example, their granddaughter had to testify, Naomi Biden, and when she and her husband walked in the courtroom that day for her to testify, the First Lady immediately looked at Naomi's husband, motioned for him to come sit right next to her. So the First Lady has been here throughout this trial, offering support again, not just to the defendant, her stepson, but also to other members of the family that have been part of this.
So again, all the type of sympathy that they're offering towards Hunter Biden, right? I just want to take you back to 1993, because you see, Hunter Biden is basically the same type of criminals that his father wanted taken off of the streets. For those who have forgotten, just a quick reminder, Joe Biden was talking about his own son. Listen to this.
We must take back the streets. It doesn't matter whether or not the person that is accosting your son or daughter, or my son or daughter, my wife, your husband, my mother, your parents. It doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth. It doesn't matter or not whether or not they had no background that enabled them to become socialized into the fabric of society.
Now, let me pause it there before he continues on, right? Because when you think about what Joe Biden just said there, Hunter Biden had everything handed to him. Hunter Biden didn't come from a broken home. Hunter Biden didn't come from a poor family. Hunter Biden didn't live in a bad neighborhood. And Joe Biden's talking about the people who came from that environment, and their environment ultimately affected some of their decisions. I'll also add poverty to that. Hunter Biden didn't come from poverty. So what is Hunter Biden's excuse? What's Joe Biden's son's excuse for acting the way that he did, for doing drugs, for having guns illegally? What's his excuse? Because he came from wealth and privilege. Let's continue on. Oh, how it is to go and reminisce on the times.
It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons.
Take on his sons. But the son is the one with the guns. His son is the one who's the criminal. Would Joe Biden want his own son taken off the streets? Would the crime bills apply to Joe Biden's son? Would the crime bills apply to Hunter Biden? No, those weren't the type of people that Joe Biden was talking about.
So I don't want to ask what made them do this. They must be taken off the street. That's number one. There's a consensus on that. Unless we do something about that cadre of young people, tens of thousands of them, born out of wedlock, without parents, without supervision, without any structure, without any conscience developing, because they literally, I yield myself 3 more minutes, because they literally have not been socialized. They literally have not had an opportunity. We should focus on them now. If we don't, they will, or a portion of them will, become the predators 15 years from now. And Madam President, we have predators on our streets.
Does that include Hunter Biden? Is he one of the predators on the streets?
That society has, in fact, in part because of its neglect, created. Again, it does not mean because we created them that we somehow forgive them or do not take them out of society to protect my family and yours from them.
To protect his family. But it's one of his own family members that was a part of the problem. It's one of his own family members that was one of those criminals that he was referring to during the speech. So you see how Joe Biden wasn't even completely aware of what was going on with his own family. You know, you out here throwing stones in a glass house. You're calling out all these other people, calling them criminals and drug dealers and gang members because they got guns and all this stuff. And your own son was a crackhead. Like, not even like jokey joke, like a literal crackhead. And addiction is real. And I've seen people struggle through addiction. The point that I'm trying to make is this: Joe Biden was ready to toss people who were struggling with addiction at that point in time, to toss them to the side into a jail cell and lock the key. But when it came to his son, the crime bills did not apply to his son. Hunter Biden wasn't thrown in prison for 20 plus years. You got to remember, the crime bills added harsher penalties for less drugs. So they actually lowered the number of the ounces that you could have, but they increased the penalty. But those penalties didn't apply to his son. This is not a fair system. This is not a legit system. This is a system that works for people who have the money and the means and the complexion for the protection to navigate their way through the system. That's who the system works for. And that's why Hunter Biden is not in jail. And that's why Hunter Biden probably won't go to jail right now.
They are beyond the pale, many of those people. Beyond the pale. And it's a sad commentary on society. We have no choice but to take them out of society. And the truth is, we don't very well know how to rehabilitate them at that point. That's the sad truth. I'm the guy that said rehabilitation, when it occurs, we don't understand it and notice it. And even when we notice it and we know it occurs, we don't know why. So you cannot make rehabilitation a condition for release. That's why in our system, the federal system, you serve 85% of your time. It's a shame, but we don't know how to rehabilitate. But there is a consensus, and I will cease. A, we must make the streets safer. I don't care why someone is a malfactor in society. I don't care why someone is antisocial. I don't care why they become a sociopath. We have an obligation to cordon them off from the rest of society, try to help them, try to change their behavior. That's why we do in this bill. We have drug treatment and we have other treatments to try to deal with it. But they are in jail, away from my mother, your husband, our families. But we would be absolutely stupid as a society if we didn't recognize the condition that nurtured those folks still exist. And we must deal with that.
Honey, if that is not the pot, call it the kettle black. And there's also this part, and shout out to Yvette Carnell for clipping this part. Yvette Carnell said, keep this same energy. So she posted this today after news broke that Hunter Biden was found guilty. Remember this part?
Oh, we've had crime bills coming out our ears. Every major crime bill since 1976, every minor crime bill has had the name of the Democratic senator from the state of Delaware, Joe Biden. You got a gun, you commit a felony, 10 years. We already have it 5 years. Minimum mandatory. Judge can't say, you had it in your pocket, you never intended to use it, we're only going to give you 1 year. Judge has to say 5 years.
Now, doesn't that apply to Hunter Biden? Right? So I can do the same thing, Joe. I can do the same thing. I can say, I don't care that your son had a tough life in his family because of the tragedies that struck the family. I can do this too. I don't care that he had struggles in his life with addiction. I don't care if he tried to turn his life around. He must be taken off the street. See how it works when you apply it to your son? Other people want to protect their families too. I don't know. You guys want to protect your family. You want to protect your wife, your husband, your kids, your brothers, your sisters. Hunter Biden must be taken off the street. But you see, it's not people like Hunter Biden that Joe Biden was referring to in the first place. The hypocrisy knows no bounds. You guys know there are still people in jail today that were affected by Joe Biden's crime bills. There was actually a guy the very first year of RBN. There was a guy that came onto RBN. He was actually punished by Joe Biden's crime bills. You're talking about people that went to jail for like 20 years for possession. When we talk about the criminal justice system, the reality is this. There are certain people that we know, whether it's based on the color of their skin, whether it's based on how much money they have, the resources that they have, and the networks that they're connected to. We know that the system works for those who have those things. And all you got to do is point to someone like Hunter Biden to see it. What a mess. What a mess. Let's go to some of the comments here. But yes, Hunter Biden found guilty. Probably won't go to prison. Amira, they couldn't find more counts. I'm sure they could. They just chose not to. Thank you for the super chat. Foe. He will be convicted, then pardoned by daddy. So they're now saying Joe Biden is not going to pardon, but he also isn't going to do any prison time, most likely. Brand Slayer said, lock his ass up. Revs Man Lucian said, what about the money laundering? Yeah. Now that's what Hunter Biden should be charged for, right? Like if they really wanted to get Hunter Biden, they would go after that. Thank you, Cosmos, for the super chat. Thanks so much. Gus says that Hunter Biden will not face jail time. There you go. The Oracle, and now the son of the author of the crime bill, needs to do some time. Let the invention haunt the inventor. There you go. Thank you for the super chat, NK. Man, I hope Hunter doesn't lose his job as a natural gas executive. It's funny, too, because the picture of the puppy there, it looks like it's the dog actually saying that. Thank you, Cynical, for the super chat. Affluenza is one hell of a drug. There you go. Thank you, Sam. Appeals are also extremely expensive. 2 systems. Aunt Shawnee TV, didn't they lock up the mayor of DC for crack? So why not him? Different complexion. Different complexion. But yes, they sure did. Marion Barry. Thank you for the super chat, Tavis. This isn't going to impact Hunter in the slightest. He won't be denied job opportunities. He will still be wealthy. There you go. Matthew says hashtag. Yes. Matthew said hashtag wiped. People are going to be joking about that for a while. Kill Your E. Groger says, don't forget to wipe your ass phones. Oh my God. The Oracle, Jill Biden's presence in the courtroom was supposed to get Hunter a not guilty verdict. Yeah, I guess that didn't work out, huh? Thank you, Sparky. It's a limited hangout, so people will think the whole Hunter Biden thing is solved. So they won't ask about Hunter in Ukraine or things incriminating his dad on his laptop, etc. There you go. That laptop, son. Shout out to Cynical, who's been a member for 1 month. I can see how he became a Zionist. He has no empathy for others that he consider beneath him. There you go. Thank you, New York Varsity. Super broken home. The father nuzzles and Tara Reid's people. 1 son passes after Iraq trauma. 1 son on crack. A daughter who was with both. Yuck. It sounds like something you would see on, like, I don't know, Keeping Up with the Kardashians or something. Or maybe it's like, what's the show about JR? Was that Dallas? Is it Dallas? Yeah. Who shot JR? I don't know. Like, it's just, Thank you, Blueser. straight flaming them. Thank you so much. And Jacqueline says, Joe Biden is complicit in way worse crimes than Hunter Biden. He's not called Genocide Joe for nothing. Just saying. Well said there, Jacqueline. All right. I see some of you are familiar with Dallas, Miss Pamela Dallas. Yeah, my mom used to watch that show. No, Be Easy said, who doped up on her? Oh man. Oh boy. Ay.